Loving one, please bless our time of reflection, of considering the ways that we can approach the Jesus story and the concept of being seeds of blessing and creation, and the many ways that we can find for life through faith to become truly figure-outable. Amen. So maybe it's a coincidence or maybe not that this is a service where I actually use this phrase maybe 4 times before 9:30 this morning, because a lot of things are happening at one time. We have the season of Pentecost, we have the temperature changing, we're trying new things with our announcements, we have amazing musicians that join us in rotation different times. Thank you everyone for being part of this. And many moving parts means sometimes things get a little tricky, and then we have to take a deep breath and say, maybe it's figure-outable. And I have to let you know, I did not invent this word myself. Pauline gets to hear all the words that I come up with, but I usually use them from other places, but some of them just stick with me and they really grab my attention. And I'll tell you where I got to use it this week already. We have a young person who's been coming to our farm about once a week this spring, and he's been helping us with some tasks around the farm. In farm language, we call that chores. He's not used to that language, so we just have jobs that he can help with, and he's at that good age where he loves everything we ask him to do. Cutting onions, yes. Vacuuming the edge of the pool deck, yes. Collecting eggs, yes. He just wants to do everything we ask, so it's a really ideal age. But I also noticed something this week. He was trying something new, and because he's not used to being on a farm, many of the tasks that we come up with are unknown. So we might throw out terms like a bucket or ideas like electrical safety, and he doesn't always know what they mean, and he's trying really hard to learn, and he really doesn't want to mess it up. And I was nearby when he was working on a new task that Brad had assigned, and then Brad got busy doing something else, and I heard him stop, and I heard him beating himself up. I heard him grumbling, saying, I hate this job, I'm so stupid, this is terrible, I'm never going to do it, and he was you could tell he was shutting right down. And I thought, oh, this might preach. And that's not why I did it, but I just thought this is an opportunity to try this new word on somebody else. And I went over and I said, okay, so what happened? And he ran through the problem. And I said, okay, well, that's too bad. You're still safe, I'm still safe. It's not the worst. I said, I have this word I've been trying out, and I kind of like it. It's a mixture of 3 words, so I said it. What do you think about this? Figure-outable. Figure-outable. And he kind of looked at me, and he said, oh. I said, because we're going to figure it out. We have to just try a new solution. I can help you, and we're going to see what happens next. And lo and behold, the task he was doing, he could complete. Now, I did help, and that's okay, but I really wanted to make sure that he knew that this was not a disaster. It's just a chore. We can figure out a new way to do it. And later on, when his dad came back in the house, he's like, hey, something went really wrong, but guess what, Dad? It's figure-outable. So I think it might get into common usage, but I should give credit beyond things like nature. We've got this beautiful little inchworm figuring out a gap here that I like. Inchworms are just so awesome. They can figure out any challenge. They just keep going, right? But this idea did come up from a book, and the book has a neat cover on it, and oddly, it's like an orange with a straw. And if you look up this book, you'll find it kind of in that self-help and business side of things, which is okay. It's not actually it's not a spiritual book, but the title had caught my eye years ago, and I already started using the phrase before I read the book. And then when I read it, I got even more ideas, and I thought it was pretty cool. So Marie Forleo has written this book and uses this image of the orange with a straw on all the promotional materials. And we'll talk about why in a minute. She's gotten lots of ideas from her parents and their life in the past, and her mom once told her, Marie, nothing in life is all that complicated. You can do whatever you set your mind to if you roll up your sleeves. Everything is figure-outable. So I really was drawn to how practical this book was, grounded in some can-do household ideas, where in her life, giving up wasn't an option. And they also had a spiritual background, which provided strength for their mindset. And so instead of that idea of panic or giving up when frustration hits, The idea is that we are gifted with skills and strengths, and we can take responsibility and take a deep breath and be part of our own resiliency. And so, okay, the orange, we have to talk about this orange. The reason was that she picked this is that her childhood home was short on funds, but high on creativity. Her mom had found a deal one time, probably through some coupon deal when we used to send away coupons and get things back in the mail. She got this quirky little radio made from a plastic orange with a straw poking out, and every time Marie would find her mom using her gifts to solve what seemed like an unsolvable problem, like a broken drain or a leaky roof, the radio accompanied her mom, playing music and making her remember that she could do the next hard thing. And I know we realize situations can't be magically fixed, but as we see, as Marie points out in her book, many tricky situations we find ourselves in, aside from the physical reality of gravity, have a way through. Not always a happy, shiny ending, but with the faith and the will that we can find a way to navigate and survive, and maybe even thrive. And so this orange radio became an image for a notion about finding a way up or over or around life's difficulties by believing that everything could be figure-outable, and to find restoration and to find hope, come what may. And when we're in this season of Pentecost, we often reflect on the story of Matthew, where Jesus spent time in ministry, reaching out, seeking disciples among the most unlikely people. And of course, he had this way of meeting people where they were and seeing their hearts and their hurts and providing healing, even in very desperate situations. He loved to challenge society's expectations and the religious structures around him. Like a seedling drawn up to the light, he was constantly finding ways to aim for mercy and healing and relationship, and showing us how forgiveness and restoration could be at the heart of Creator's love for the world. So we've heard that Jesus came alongside Matthew at a tax booth, showing us in a real way that Matthew was part of a system that Jesus was constantly challenging. But instead of calling Matthew out, he called Matthew in, and Matthew left it all behind somehow and followed. It's interesting to hear how Jesus called Matthew into a new chapter, one that would be flexible enough to prioritize relationships over obsessing about being correct and perfect in every ritual. And there's also this view of love and restoration that Jesus displays that comes from hospitality and welcome, and not shutting doors, and making new pathways for new relationships and new life. There are even hints at the flexibility and the organic groundedness of some indigenous traditions as well, in how this idea of hospitality and relationship was meant to lead it all. So no matter who he met, those suffering with illness and shame, or whatever was standing in the way of the life they had, Jesus responded with care and concern, restoring their confidence in themselves and restoring their faith in a loving God. He was able to provide healing and goodness to others, to their body or their soul, so they could be loved and seen in their communities, fully restored. And I'm pretty sure that none of the translations of the Bible we refer to would include some of the words that I sometimes come up with or use these days, but I wonder if we could say that part of the Jesus story was grounded in this idea of resilience, drawing on our gifts, and that through faith we also could find a way to turn our challenges into stories that we too could call figure-outable. And so since we have nature at hand today while we bless our garden time and our season of growth, we have, I've pulled together a few different images of situations that I've come across in nature that help us show the God's love in creation and how that can teach us about resiliency. So this one, you'd have to squint a little bit to understand what I've got here. Do you see a tree trunk buried in a garden? I hope you see that. There's flowers at the top, and in the bottom in the grass, do you see like 20 little mushrooms? They're there. I'll have to show it on Facebook so you can really see it, but this is a real picture from my yard, so I'll tell you what it's about. So on our family farm, we had our favorite front yard maple tree, and it was part of the shade and the landscape and the look, and the temperature cooling feature of keeping our farmhouse protected. And it was in every picture and every map and every overhead drawing and whatnot of the farm. So we've had 4 generations of Lunns raised under this tree, and we didn't want to see it go. But we also didn't want to have it fall on the house. And sometimes trees get to that point where the branches stop growing leaves, we get a little worried, and we had to figure out what to do because every storm made us think this might be the time that part of it would land on our bedroom. So despite all the sentimentality, we got a crew in to help us remove it, and lo and behold, the rings inside it showed a lot more damage than we actually expected. So it really was time for us to deal with this issue, and even though we were sad to see it go, and I was sad to see the temperature change in my house, it really was something we had to move on with, and so everyone was very excited to cut up all this entire tree in the heat of the summer, so that it would in turn heat us again in the winter with our wood stove. And of course we were sad and a bit nostalgic, and things had changed, but there was also an opportunity now of this new area in front of our house. We could completely erase it, get in some equipment and just dig the whole thing out, grind it up, or we could let time and nature take its course. And so we chose the latter, drilled some holes and made a stump garden. So we've covered it with compost and we've covered it with plants, and we're hoping that underneath it all, it will compost over time. And then this spring, lo and behold, I looked out one morning and saw all these white dots all over the grass, and they're following the trail of every root system from that tree, showing us that the underground work is already happening, and the new cycle of life is beginning. So it outlines the path of where the decay is happening, but that is also converting nutrients to give new life to the soil around it. So soon we'll be able to plant a new grouping of tree saplings for future generations. And of course, this one I'll have to share on some other system as well, but I think if you look close to that gigantic yellow arrow, do you see a single spear of asparagus? Can you see it? You have to see the context to understand why I'm showing you this. So when I went to seminary, the training I took for ministry, I met this delightful human named Rodney, who was into technology and singing and faith. And since his time at school, has also gotten into farming. So he and his partner have a small farm near Grimsby. They grow produce, and they grow it for their community. Unfortunately, this spring they had a huge, devastating fire, and they have a small barn where all their work was happening to prepare the seedlings for the spring, stored all their equipment, kept them all organized for the growing season. And of course they were devastated as everything went up in literal smoke. But their prayers were answered in so many ways. Volunteer firefighters, visitors with hugs and muffins, customers who have become friends, making donations and offers to help rebuild. And then just last week, he shared this awesome picture of one lone asparagus spear rising from the ashes. So this little spear seriously is growing, where he said, he assures me we're not going to eat this one. He said the area that it's growing up in had 22 fire truck loads of foam and water. So it's not the best, tastiest asparagus, but isn't that a great story? That here it is, growing in the rubble. So of course, Rodney and his partner didn't know what was coming, and their plans were upended. And all of this could have stopped them in their tracks and made them stop their whole plan and vision for farming at all. But here they are, experiencing a new season on the farm with restored faith in humanity and plans to rebuild, and definitely more asparagus by next summer. And the lilac. So to me, lilacs are today an example of transplanting, and I want to talk about why. Because I was able to spend some time here with many of you on our plant and bake sale day a few weeks ago. And there were lots of friendly interactions, a chance for us to greet folks in our neighborhood. And despite the rain, and okay, even plant and bake sales have to have their figure-outable moments, we moved it all inside. So 2 adults and a child came in, and this woman was so excited. This woman wanted a rose of Sharon, check, and she wanted a lilac. And so I said, I have to ask, what's the history? What do you love about these plants? Well, it turns out this is a blended family, and she's moved her and her child across town to a new place with her new partner, and she really just wanted to have the look and the smell of home. And if she could get those 2 plants growing in her garden this year, she'd feel like they had arrived in the new place and they would be comfortable in their new yard. So as she excitedly packed the trunk full of treats in the pouring rain, it seemed like a blessing. The plants were ready for a new start to be transplanted, and some homemade cookies also to sweeten the time of transition. But as we know, new life comes in many forms. So the question remains, where is the good news? We can use different language around what God has promised us, whether it be new beginnings, forever tries for forgiveness and new starts, and knowing that our path might take a new direction than we expected, but that we also can grow and change in new directions too. So what kind of figure-outable are you? Maybe you're a survivor. You're that piece of asparagus still growing. Maybe it's resurrection, mushrooms indicating a new cycle of life and moving on with a new legacy. Or maybe it's new life in transplants, like the simple and humble lilac. Creator finds so many ways to show us and remind us and breathe into us the skills and gifts we have through the nature that surrounds us, so we can experience new life, just as we celebrate new life and resurrection every time we gather to worship, and with the dawning of every new day. Maybe we can take heart and hope from this notion that Jesus promised restoration, and because of that, we could also find our way to make the impossible possible. Because with faith, I hope, everything really is figure-outable.